Have you ever worked overtime on a project, putting in extra hours and maximum effort, only to watch someone who barely contributed get the same recognition as you? Or maybe you've been the student who studied for weeks while your classmates crammed the night before and somehow they scored higher than you on the exam. These situations can cause us to feel frustrated, thinking, that's not fair. I worked harder. I deserve more. What if God operates on a completely different principle? What if our understanding of fairness is backwards compared to His? Today on More to Life, we're exploring a strange story that might just challenge everything you thought you knew about God while exploring the topic of fairness. A number of years ago, an extraordinary story emerged from a marathon race in Spain. Abel Mutai, an Olympic medalist from Kenya, was leading the race and certain to win. But as he approached the finish line, something unexpected happened. He stopped running about 10 meters short of the finish line, mistakenly believing he had already crossed it. In that moment, Spanish runner Ivan Fernandez Anaya caught up to him. Fernandez had a choice. He could take advantage of Mutai's mistake, passing him, and claim first place for himself, or he could do something else. What would you do in that situation? After all, races are about winning, and winning is about being first, right? This race illustrates something about how we view success and fairness. In our world, almost everything operates on what we call a merit system. It would have been fair if Ivan simply ran around Abel and claimed first place. But something inside of us would have wondered if that was right. I mean, would Ivan have earned first place, fair and square? That's the dilemma. Stay tuned to the end of this episode where I will tell you what actually happened. And it may surprise you. For many people, it doesn't really matter how you achieved first place as long as you got it. You deserved it. This merit-based thinking is so deeply ingrained that we hardly even notice it. It feels natural, it feels intuitive and fair that those who work harder or perform better should receive greater rewards. And it creates in us a sense of what we and others deserve. What complicates this even more is how uncomfortable you feel when you receive a substantial gift that's truly free. No strings attached. Nothing expected in return. You know, if we're honest, many of us struggle to simply accept a gift like that. We immediately think, well, I didn't deserve this. How am I going to return something to them of equal or greater value? Or what strings come attached with this gift? And when we see someone else receive a large reward that we don't think they've earned, whether it's winning the lottery or someone who inherits wealth or a colleague who gets the same promotion despite doing less work, if we're honest, we might feel a tinge of jealousy or even resentment, thinking, you know what, that should have been me. Jesus understood this about human nature. That's why one of his most provocative parables directly challenges our merit-based understanding of fairness. It's a story that at first glance seems to break all the rules of what we consider to be fair. And yet, within this uncomfortable narrative lies a profound truth about God's kingdom and our place in it. Today, we're going to explore Jesus' parable of the vineyard owner, a story that turns our understanding of fairness completely upside down and invites us to see God's grace not as a reward to be earned, but as a gift to be received. And in the process, we might just discover that there's more to life than keeping score and getting only what we deserve. In the book of Matthew, chapter 20, Jesus tells a story that must have sounded as strange to his original audience as it does to us today. It begins with a vineyard owner who goes out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agrees to pay them a standard day's wage and then sends them to work. Throughout the day, he returns to the marketplace at different hours, 9 a.m., noon, 3 p.m., each time finding more workers standing idle. Each time he hires them and sends them to his vineyard to work, simply telling them, I will pay you whatever is right at the end of the day. Matthew chapter 20, verse 4. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Near the end of the workday at 5 p.m., with only 1 hour of work remaining, the owner makes one final trip to the marketplace. He finds people still standing there and asks them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because no one hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." Matthew 20, verses 6 and 7. Notice that unlike the workers hired earlier in the day, these last workers never even discussed payment. They were simply grateful for the opportunity to work at all, even if just for an hour. When evening came, the vineyard owner tells his foreman to call all the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last ones hired first. And here we encounter the first strange act by the owner. The 12-hour workers, the ones who woke up early, worked a full day under the hot sun, who were dusty and tired and eager to go home, were made to wait in line while those who had worked just 1 hour were paid first. Why would the owner do that? Why not simply pay the workers in the order they were hired? The answer becomes clear in verse 9, where it says, "When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage." A full day's wage for just 1 hour of work? Can you imagine the surprise of these last-minute workers? They probably expected just a few coins, some change, a fraction of a day's wage for their short time in the field. Instead, they received far more than they could ever even hoped for. And as the 12-hour workers watched this unfold, their expectations must have went through the roof. They began to make calculations in their heads. Well, if these latecomers who worked only 1 hour got a full day's wage, then someone like me who worked a full 12 hours will probably get a small fortune. They could already imagine what they do with this generous, unexpected overtime pay. Perhaps maybe they're gonna surprise their family with a meal, maybe buy some new clothes, or finally get to go on that small weekend getaway with their spouse. But verse 10 tells us, when those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more, but they too were paid a day's wage. Exactly what was promised. Nothing more, nothing less. Wait, what? Now, understandably, the reaction of the all-day workers is one of outrage. Verses 11 and 12 says, when they received their pay, they protested to the owner, "Those people worked only 1 hour, and yet you've paid them just as much as you paid us who worked all day in the scorching heat?" Their complaint is understandable from a merit perspective. It doesn't seem fair, but the owner's response challenges our entire framework of fairness. He answered one of them, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others? So those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first will be last. Matthew chapter 20, verses 13 to 16. The 12-hour workers were so upset, they didn't even want to take the money that they had earned. The owner had to convince them to accept it. In this parable, the vineyard owner represents God, showing his generosity to everyone. The workers symbolize us, people who enter God's kingdom at different stages of life. The vineyard itself represents God's kingdom and where we live now. The payment at the end of the day symbolizes salvation and eternal life. John chapter 3 verse 16 says, "For this is how God loved the world. He gave His one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in Him will not perish, but have eternal life." This parable feels strange and uncomfortable precisely because it challenges our deeply held beliefs about fairness and merit. But that's exactly what Jesus intended by sharing this parable. He wants us to understand that God's kingdom operates on different principles than ours. From our jobs to our schools, even in our volunteer activities, everything in this world is predicated on earning what you get and getting what you deserve. I remember one time when I was in high school, I studied hard for a very important test, only to watch a popular classmate cheat his way to the highest grade using notes hidden on the inside of the paper sleeve of his eraser. I wasn't necessarily upset because he got the highest grade. I was upset because of how he got it. I knew he cheated. It wasn't fair. He didn't deserve it. He didn't earn it. The merit mindset even creeps into our spiritual thinking. Consider missionaries who have devoted their lives to service and then they get sick. People visit them, prayers are offered, reminding God of their years of faithful service and all they could still accomplish if God would only heal them. The unspoken sentiment is, Lord, this person really deserves your help. Yet sometimes, despite these prayers, the missionary dies. Meanwhile, others whose lives may not have aligned with God at all, who lived by no rules or even cared for what others thought of them, might face a similar health crisis. In their final moments, they express regret for how they've lived. There's no special ceremony. They unexpectedly then recover and walk away with no further health problems. And again, we wonder about God's system. God's free grace might be good news for someone who's lived a life apart from a relationship with Him, but what about the faithful missionary? Don't they deserve at least equal treatment? Well, I have good news and I have bad news. The bad news is that none of us can ever be worthy enough to deserve anything from God. No one can earn or merit God's grace. Eternal life is free. And that's bad news to someone who's been working hard trying to earn it. You know, this reminds me of a story found in Matthew chapter 19, the chapter right before this one, when a rich young man runs up to Jesus and asks him what he must do to have eternal life. Jesus tells him to sell all his possessions, give it to the poor, give the money to the poor, and follow him. But the rich man goes away sad. Why? Because he was very wealthy. Then Peter, speaking for the disciples, asks Jesus, we've given up everything to follow you. What will we get? You can hear it in his question. They're still operating on the merit system. But Jesus responds with a fascinating statement and the good news. In verse 29, he says, "Everyone who has given up houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or property for my sake will receive 100 times as much in return and will inherit eternal life." Matthew chapter 19, verse 29. I want you to notice that there are two rewards here. Those who have left everything to follow Christ will receive 100 times in return. When? In this present time. And in addition, they will also receive eternal life when Jesus returns. Now, with this understanding, let's return to the vineyard owner parable and look at it again. It seems like Jesus was trying to say that there is a reward in being able to work throughout the day in the vineyard, getting to know the vineyard owner, in addition to the reward at the end of the day. The reward comes through the day, not just at the end. In the end, the pay is the same for everyone, no matter how long they've worked. And the same is true regarding our relationship with Jesus and eternal life. In the end, the reward for knowing and having a relationship with Him is eternal life. But there is another reward, one that we get to experience now. And that's getting to know the vineyard owner, who is Jesus. This is something that someone who accepts Jesus at the end of their lives will not get to experience. So if you know Jesus and have a relationship with Him, that itself is a reward. That itself is a privilege. The happiest people are those who focus on the privilege of knowing Jesus and having a daily walk with Him, rather than simply calculating what they'll get at the end of time and being jealous because they're comparing themselves to others spiritually. This parable challenges us to examine our hearts. Are we serving God because we love Him and find joy in His presence? Or are we keeping score? Are we tallying up all of our good deeds and sacrifices, expecting God to pay us proportionately? The strange economy of God's kingdom upends our natural understanding. Something and sometimes the last will be first, and the first will be last. And the truth is, we all receive far more grace than we could ever deserve. When we truly understand this, our response changes from frustration at God's generosity towards others to one of profound gratitude for His unmerited kindness towards us.
Who is Jesus of Nazareth? Was He truly God, as Christians say He is? And why did Jesus come to earth to die? And how does His death offer us salvation? What happens when I die? Is there really a heaven or hell? These questions and others we answer on our online Bible study platform at hopestudy.ca. There, you will find answers to these and other life-changing questions. If you have any questions, please email us at hopestudy@hopetv.ca. God bless you. See you there.
How do we apply this countercultural message about God's grace in our daily lives? Let me offer 3 reflective questions that can help us embrace God's upside-down economy of grace. Number 1, how has the merit mindset affected your view of God? Take a moment to honestly think about this. Do you ever feel like God owes you something because of your faithfulness? How do you feel when you see God blessing someone who seems less deserving than you? When facing difficulties despite your faithfulness, do you ever wonder, God, why is this happening to me? I don't deserve this. These reactions are natural, but they reveal that we may still be operating on the merit system rather than God's grace system. When we find ourselves thinking this way, it's an opportunity to realign our hearts with the truth that everything we receive from God, from the life we have to eternal salvation, is a gift, not a wage to be earned. Number 2, how can you shift from calculating what you deserve to celebrating what you've been given? Consider these practical steps. Start each day by acknowledging 3 undeserved gifts in your life. When you catch yourself feeling entitled to God's blessings, consciously reframe it. I don't deserve this, but thank you for your grace. When praying for needs, focus less on why you deserve help and more on God's character of love and grace. The vineyard owner in Jesus' parable didn't pay the late workers generously because they deserved it, but because it reflected his character. God blesses us not because of our merit, but because generosity is his nature. Number 3, how can you extend this same grace to others? Think about this. Is there someone in your life who, like the late workers, doesn't deserve your grace, but needs it anyways? Where might God be calling you to be unexpectedly generous? Who around you believes they have to earn love, acceptance, or forgiveness? How can you help them experience grace instead? The parable of the vineyard workers reminds us that there are really 2 rewards in following Jesus. First, there's the joy of working in his presence right now, experiencing his love, his guidance, and purpose daily. Then there's the ultimate reward of eternal life. Sometimes we're so focused on the final payment that we miss the privilege of spending our days in the vineyard with the owner. There's joy in simply being with Jesus, regardless of what we receive in the end. This week, I challenge you to practice living by grace rather than merit. Identify one area where you've been operating on a merit system with God and just release that expectation. Look for someone who needs grace, not what they deserve, but what would truly bless them, and extend it generously. Take time each day to simply enjoy God's presence, focusing not on what you're doing for him or what he might give you, but simply on the gift of a relationship with him. Remember, in God's kingdom, the grace you freely receive becomes the grace you freely give. When you truly understand that we work from God's love and not for it, everything changes. As you implement these practices, I'd love to hear how they're impacting your relationship with God and others. I invite you to connect with me on More to Life on social media channels that we have, and share your experiences there. We have a growing community who is there to support you.
Hope Channel Canada is more than a TV channel. It is a movement of hope, health, and salvation. Lives are being changed each day through our programs. You also can become an agent of hope in Canada. Whether through prayer, volunteering, or a donation, your actions create ripples of change. Just like threads woven into a tapestry, your small contribution helps to build something beautiful. All you need to do is to visit agentsofhope.ca or call 1-855-4-HOPE-TV to get involved. Thank you for your support.
Let's return to that race in Spain where Olympic medalist Abel Mutai mistakenly stopped before the finish line, thinking that he had already won. What happened next reveals something profound about the kingdom principles we've been discussing. When Spanish runner Ivan caught up to Abel, he didn't take advantage of the mistake to claim first place for himself. Instead, he stopped, pointed to the actual finish line, and guided his competitor there, deliberately staying behind Mutai so he could cross and win the race first. When reporters later asked why he didn't take advantage of the win, Ivan said, "My dream is that someday we can have a kind of community life where we push and help each other to win." In a merit-based world that celebrates winning at all costs, Ivan's actions make no sense. By the world's logic, he should have seized the opportunity to claim the victory, to claim first place. But he operated by a different set of principles. Principles that value integrity over advantage, kindness over achievement, and doing what's right over what benefited himself. This is a beautiful picture of what living for Jesus looks like in practice. It would be easy for us to focus solely on our own salvation, on our own spiritual journey, our own reward. But Jesus calls us to something greater. He calls us to serve others, to point them towards the true finish line, to prioritize their journey even when it might seem to disadvantage our own. Today, we've discovered 3 transformative truths from Jesus' parable of the vineyard workers. First, we learn that God's kingdom operates on grace, not merit. No matter when we entered the vineyard, whether we've served God from childhood or found faith in our later years, we receive the same gift of salvation. Second, we saw that there are 2 rewards in following Jesus: the present joy of working in his vineyard and knowing him daily, and the future inheritance of eternal life. Sometimes we're so focused on the final payment that we receive that without really realizing the privilege of spending time with him. And third, we discovered that our response to God's generous grace should be to extend that same unexpected, unfair grace to others, helping them find their way to the finish line even when they don't deserve our help. There are people all around us who are tempted to make this world and its achievements their finish line. They're running hard after success and comfort and wealth or recognition, not realizing they're about to stop short of what truly matters. Let me ask you, are you one of them? You can decide today to accept Jesus and begin a life of knowing him and experiencing his grace, his forgiveness, and freedom like you've never experienced them before. All you have to do is right now say yes to Jesus in your heart. If this is something you'd like to do, or perhaps you have some questions, please send me a message on More to Life social media pages. I'd love to connect with you and help you on your journey. To close, we've learned that in God's upside down kingdom, sometimes the first will be last and the last will be first. But perhaps the most beautiful truth is that it doesn't really matter where in the line we stand, because at the end of the day, every one of us receives far more than we could ever earn. The priceless gift of God's love, his presence, and eternal life. God bless you.